I think it might be kind of fun to start just about how we started about this discussion about scaling our VA lending.
Yeah.
So it was, you were at the bank and then you left, and so it was like in this little gap of time where you weren't here and then you came back. But we originally we launched the VA lending because Marcus and I, my husband and I, were going to get a VA loan to buy this house that we were buying, the one that we are now. But the environment was super competitive. And the realtor was like, the buyer is not going to accept a VA loan because it's going to take too long of a process. And fortunately, like, the people that we were buying it from knew who we were. And so they were a little bit like, they're like, okay, we'll sell it to them with this VA loan, knowing they'll take a little bit longer. But the appraisers were like really tied up at that time. And so it was taking longer and longer and longer. And then finally, we just felt like we had to do something. And so fortunately, the bank did an in-house loan for us because we do one in like 7 days. But it made me really aware of like, holy cow, like in a competitive environment, a VA loan can really be a detriment if it's not fast. And we were doing it through a big bank. And so that's really why we started investing in the back office to do a fast VA loan. So, but even though we've been doing secondary market loans at Citizens for a really long time, including VA loans, I think Roger gave us more awareness of both the competitive challenges that veterans face or service members face using their VA loan, but also just lack of awareness of VA loans and the benefit of the 0% down out there in the marketplace. So I know then he came back, and so
it's estimated that a third of veterans aren't even aware of the VA loan product at all, regardless of the zero down. The other thing that's interesting about the competitiveness of a VA loan is oftentimes you see government guaranteed loans, VA loans specifically, coming from unknown brands or unknown names. And so I think it's interesting to have a bank with 125 years combined with a service member led organization through Roger be able to give an approval letter. And I'd be excited to see that change that story in the competitive landscape, but it's coming from a bank like us versus, name your brokerage out there.
Yeah, in the last few years, like whenever we were going through the VA process to see how we could streamline it internally to make it faster, we thought, wow, there could be some simple changes even in regulation and the requirements for VA loans to make this better for the service member, former service member that's using it. And so it's been fun too to be at the table to be able to say, okay, these little tweaks to make it more like an FHA loan could potentially make it where the service member is more competitive. But you're right, like the biggest producers, we were just looking at the list of people that are really doing the VA lending right now, and it's really mortgage companies and not so many banks. And so to be able to now have a 125-year-old institution that's really focusing on that VA lending opportunities, I hope so. That's a great argument for it, is making it more competitive, is that a real bank is behind it.
Yeah, I think having access to a decision maker behind that approval process or that loan too makes a world of difference, that when something happens throughout a file, which can happen, that you can call someone that's a decision maker, they can help intervene in the process. So that's what's exciting about coming back and leaning into VA lending specifically through Roger, is that we do that here in our community, and we can do that on a bigger scale. So
yeah, it's super exciting. And then when you think about, I don't know if there's any other bank that has a chief lending officer and a CEO that both had VA loans themselves and have gone through the process. And both of us kind of similar enlistment stories too. So I mean, coming from like the military being like the economic mobilizer for us, and then to be able to be the pathway to home ownership, it can really be a great tool.
Yeah, I don't know how many banks would have that, but I know that the other thing I was looking up earlier is that the communities where veterans own their homes are, I don't remember the specific statistics, but are infinitely more prosperous because the veterans own their homes in those communities. And so it's a force multiplier for those communities. So I think that's exciting too to look at. So
what do you think is the differentiator with Citizens Bank and Roger being a VA lender compared to maybe other avenues, especially since we're really leaning into it initially right now?
Yeah. I think you spoke to it having, on Roger specifically, 100% of the Roger team is serving or has served. I think that's a huge differentiator. And so many of us have experienced that process ourselves. And so, again, when something goes wrong or something's urgent or is time sensitive, it just pulls a little more passion from those leaders to make sure it gets done. Citizens, I think, is uniquely different because we're the We're 125 years old just a few days ago. And so we've been loaning money on homes in this community for over 100 years. And so I don't think that a lot of lenders currently that you're going to find that are some of the largest volume lenders can tell that story at all.
What's also really cool about the relationship with Roger and Citizens is not only how do all those team members have they served, but they also get to be owners in Citizens Bank of Edmond. So the ownership of Citizens Bank of Edmond is that team, plus that team has this highly relevant experience and this great heart for the service member community.
Yeah, that's a good point. That we have so many employees, both Roger and Citizens, which is all the same organization, that have tangible ownership in the organization through our ESOP. So yeah, I don't know, I haven't done the research to put all those dots together, but I don't think they connect anywhere else but here.
And so can Roger and Citizens Bank of Edmond, can we do VA loans anywhere, or is there any restrictions to that?
We can do it in all 50 states. So there's no restriction. If you do a loan through Roger, you're doing a loan through Citizens Bank of Edmond. And so as a bank, we can do those anywhere in the country.
And so how do you interact with someone that's maybe in Hawaii getting a VA loan, and here we are in Oklahoma? What does that support look like?
I mean, technology obviously helps that get better. I know our MLOs, mortgage loan officers, have FaceTime, Zoom, all the access, and work all hours of the day and can accommodate someone in a different time zone, which would be important if you're buying a house in Hawaii. If you need to talk to a title company or a realtor in Hawaii, you're going to need a team that's nimble enough not to give you their business hours. They can just give you their cell phone, which you're good at too. So.
Yeah, and we do. CEO, I provide my cell phone number out there, and the Roger team, even outside the mortgage lending team, provides 24/7 support. They have a kind of emergency phone line as well as emails that they monitor 24/7. So pretty cool. I think another thing that's neat about a bank versus maybe going with a mortgage lender is that our team is going to be here for years. That's really not working as like a separate entity. It's really all part of this team with a commitment to doing this for decades to come.
I was going to say it's a good point too, as you bring that up, that there's probably getting a loan, and specifically a home loan, is maybe one of the biggest discovery conversations you're going to have with your banker. So you have to talk about everything from where your bank accounts are to what do you owe on your car loans or whatever it might be. And so a lot of times when you're working with a mortgage lender, they're just focused on helping you with that transaction, which is important, of course, and it's the most pressing need. But not many can offer through a veteran-led organization everything that you might need. So as you go through that process and you talk about your savings account, you get the opportunity to talk with someone who can also tell you about what Roger in this case can do from a savings account perspective. Not from a sales perspective, but really giving you better options than you might have. And so I think that's super unique as I think about it.
And you've been part of other banking organizations, some of which have military divisions that have served the military community. But I think this is kind of the first that you've been able to have more of a military service kind of oriented institution, especially kind of building it from the ground up. Can you talk a little bit about how that personally, what that means to you, and building Roger, what you see where it can go?
Yeah, I think back up a little bit of my story quickly is I joined the Air Force because I didn't have a better plan. And so it pushed me into a healthy, tough situation. Joining the military can be tough, especially if I didn't have a family history of it, so I didn't know what to expect. Going through that process and serving in the military, and then we talked about this previously in the private sector, as you get out and you go into banking or whatever it is, being a part of a team that understands what it's like to be tactical, be strategic, and execute with a sense of urgency, I think is paramount. And I think that'll translate into where Roger can go. I think we can be, I don't know what ranking, but we can be a top VA lender in the country. I'm excited about that, but I'm also excited about what it changes for service members across the board, from their personal needs to whatever enterprise pursuits they have on the side needs to their home loan needs. And then we can be a part of their story from the newly enlisted service member like I was, like you were, that really had no idea what they were doing, to now looking back and seeing how that formed them into who they are today with opportunity and options into the future. And I think we can be a part of that every step along the way.
and we have the VA focus that we're talking about today, but then also, I mean, Roger itself is expanding into more of a full service bank with business banking. I think that understanding, like you alluded to, with even understanding a small business owner veteran, not just someone that served, that maybe mortgage, just someone from a mortgage brokerage industry may just be focused on that transaction and how to prove income, where we're really going to be able to understand that full situation with that individual. And in some cases, maybe the VA loan isn't the right choice, and we've got a whole portfolio lending opportunities and others that can help maybe fit someone's situation even better.
Yeah, it's a great point. As you were saying that, I was thinking that VA loan is a great opportunity. It's a great option, and everyone who's eligible for it should take advantage of it. But if you've transitioned out of service and maybe you're self-employed and you're a business owner, there are circumstances in which that may not work or it's not the best option. So yeah, it's going to be hard to find a bank that will talk to you about your VA loan, but if that's not an option, curate kind of a custom plan for you on the other side to still get you in a home, because it's still advantageous for communities to have veterans own homes in them. And so I think we can look at it through that lens as, okay, a VA loan doesn't work in this situation. What else can we offer? And as a bank, we can offer, as you alluded to, these in-house products that we keep and we service and we retain. And then that gives you access to decision makers. I talk to people that come in and want to buy a house myself, and I talk to people that need a $3,000 loan for a used car. I talk to people that need a $3 million loan for a business expansion. And so it's hard to find elsewhere, I think, a veteran, someone who understands that, and a decision maker you can talk to. And I know you do the same all the time for people that come in. We were just talking to a business owner this week and sampling their product. Yes. So I just think I just don't know anywhere else you can find that. That could also reach a national scale and give that personalized touch and service and passion into each person's situation on that scale. I just can't come up with somewhere else that can do that.
Whenever you were getting your first VA loan and buying a home, what words of advice do you wish someone would have given you at that time, or that you would go back to like younger Josh and Josh and Jennifer and saying like, this is what advice I would give you right now? And
be patient throughout the process is one of the biggest things that I recall from the first time I got the VA loan, which was years ago. I remember thinking it would be a little bit more of a simple process, and any home loan process anymore can feel complex. I think, again, the difference maker is who you're dealing with to help you make that seem seamless and make it simple for you. So I think be patient, be organized. Those are probably the two biggest things. Be patient and organized is one of the biggest things I could think of. So.
Yeah, I think for me, I would have gone back and said, okay, you need to pull your credit report first and kind of see if you have anything out there, because you move around a lot with the military, that all those debts have been satisfied and that you can work with any of those kind of any challenges you had to get those corrected before you apply for the loan. And back then, whenever I got mine, you couldn't just go online and pull your credit report and see your score. And then one of the coolest aspects of Roger and Citizens Bank of Edmond accounts is all you have to do is opt in to monitor your credit, and it pops right up without having to pay any kind of fee with an account. And so being able to have access to those, like what your score is, how you could go about just easily increasing your score. I wish I would have had that kind of tool, as well as the ability to like just even pull my credit and know that I need to do that before I went to have like a lender do that, and then having to go out and do some corrections. So
it's a good point. I think the piece of advice I'd say is open your account with Roger, because then you get that free access, and that will give you insight, and you can even visit, again, if you're working with a bank like us, give you insight into if there are challenges that show up on there, how can you maybe work to overcome those challenges. I think the other piece of advice as I think through that is, if you have challenges or you have a lack of credit history, don't be ashamed of it. It happens to a lot of people, especially service members. It can happen just because you move a lot, you might forget about this bill or that bill. And so I think that if it's a challenge, be open about it. Don't hide from it, don't run from it, because that won't solve anything. Just be open about it and talk to a good, reputable banker.
Yes.
But if you open your account with Roger, you get that from day one. So
yeah, it's pretty awesome. I know we have adult children, and building that credit history is so important. But then it's really difficult to do that if you're even debt adverse. And so,
That's right.
and then there's been, unfortunately, history where there's been those payday loans and kind of high rate used car loans that are right outside the gates of a lot of military installations. And so we can also help with kind of dealing with any issues that could erupted kind of in those early days of serving.
Yes.
And so being transparent and kind of all cards on the table with what your challenges are, because we have a lot of empathy in knowing that not everybody's coming from a history in which they've got a big trust fund or something.
That's
so
right.
it's, we're all, so many are really working their way up and into the dream of homeownership and being able to position to the VA loan or some other mechanism of doing that is really important. I also want to talk about you've done some real estate investing too, as part of your repertoire of how you've built your family and your businesses. And so the VA loan can somewhat be used for like multifamily type of 1 to 4 family. Can you talk a little bit about that? I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, I can. I haven't used that product for that, but I'm very familiar with how it can be used for that because of some of my experience. And you can use your VA home loan to buy what's called a 1 to 4 family property, and that's a building, a house that has 1 to 4 units or doors in it. So you can buy a single family house, you can buy a duplex, a triplex, or a quadplex. And so requirements are you have to live in one of them, but you can earn investment income with your VA loan buying a quadplex, for example, where you have 3 other units that you're renting out to other people that can, in a lot of cases, more than cover the payment, hopefully more than covers the payment, and you kind of live there for free, if you will, through that investment. And so that's something that's not talked about a lot if you do your research. So if a third of veterans aren't aware of the VA home loan product at all, I don't know the number, but I suspect it's a really high percentage that aren't aware they can use it for that. And you can use your VA loan not just for your first property that you ever buy, you can use it subsequently for another property, not multiple at a time, but you can use it later in life. It's not just a one-time and done. And so some people probably need to look at they have a VA loan, there's a quadplex, they'd be willing to live in one of the units, and so maybe they could refinance their VA loan on their other property they're moving away from, turn it into an investment property, and go move into a quadplex, for example, or duplex. So yeah, that's a huge wealth builder for veterans that I suspect almost none are aware of, or not many, I guess. And that changes your future, not only for yourself, but for your kids and their kids and maybe generations to come. So
yeah, I think thinking about the partnership of having Citizens Bank of Edmond, and that we created Roger, and it has this mortgage operation that even if you then started scaling more investments, if you were able to express that to our team that this is your goal, then we're able to have the tools to help you scale that well even beyond a 1 to 4 family VA loan.
That's right.
And we've seen that be really successful with military service members here in Oklahoma that have moved on, but they utilized just traditional bank lending to build an investment portfolio around Tinker, where a lot of Navy and Air Force pilots come back to during their careers. So it's a really unique opportunity for someone with a VA lending kind of pathway here at Citizens and Roger to then be able to start building more wealth, more investment opportunities, if that's something that's a priority for them.
Yeah, you made a good point that our team can work with you on it, because as you're saying that, I'm sitting here thinking of strategies for people to use.
Yes.
But that's what you get with a bank like ours. So for example, you could, the average current service member, their average length of time that they move is every 2 to 4 years or so. So if you lived in a duplex, quadplex, whatever it is, and you work with a bank like ours, and then you need to move in 4 years, let's say, and you need to use your VA benefit again, certainly fine to do, because we can then work with you to refinance your VA loan into more of a commercial style loan since you won't live in that unit anymore, but you don't have to sell it if you don't want to. So I think that's huge for someone to work with someone like us, because we can identify that. Again, going through that discovery of that loan application process, if you say those key words to us, or your goals for your life, we're going to be able to pick up on that in an instant and then help you see what that looks like years down the road.
Yeah, and the same as if you're PCSing. I know a friend right now that's PCSing, and they bought a house at the installation where they were at because they thought they were going to stay there for a while, but they're leaving after only a year.
Right.
And so now they're waiting, well, I have to sell this house before I can buy another house. Working with us, we can provide bridge financing. You can take out that original home's VA loan, and so then they have the entitlement to be able to go buy another one using VA. Maybe if they want to turn the trailing house as a investment property, we can help determine if they've got the cash flow to do that. So there's just a lot of sophistication beyond just the transaction of a VA loan that a bank like ours is able to do.
I agree with that 100%. So you asked earlier kind of some of the key differences in the moment. I was thinking of some, but things like that, the others are great, but those are the things that could impact generational wealth for military families, which is something that, going back to why I'm excited about it, I mean, I think that's what excites me, is to make our service members prosperous. They've served this country, and it's a great thing when they can prosper and their families can prosper. So,
and then the ability to move to different locations, PCS has a lot of challenges associated with it, but then to also have this diversity potentially of an investment portfolio that you're able to leave the service with can be really a great asset to know, and have diversity in your investments so that they're not localized, and I mean, it really could turn into something that's quite amazing. Anything else that you want to talk about from a VA loan standpoint?
I was curious, more just, you have your daughter and son are both service members, but what advice have you had to give them about, I know I can't recall if they own houses yet. I know Olivia doesn't yet, but have you had to give them advice about what you asked me, kind of what advice, what do you tell them?
Yeah, so our oldest son, they waited a while before they bought a house, but they did, and they bought something that they thought that they could utilize as an investment vehicle down the road. The VA loan does have a funding fee associated with it that goes to the VA, and so if you have a good down payment availability, sometimes it may be better not to do a VA loan and just do a traditional secondary market loan or in-house loan. So I don't think that they did the actual VA loan. But for them, it's about more having at that age about cash flow.
Yeah.
And so making sure if you can get a good rate, then if it opens up cash flow to have a 30-year mortgage, for them that was a good position to be in. And they also could compare what their payments were compared to what the going rate was for renting that property, and making sure that kind of matched up so that they wouldn't kind of be exposed. We really focus on preaching stay as debt-free as you possibly can, especially through college. And so they were fortunate that they went through 4 years of college. That college was free. They went to the academies, and they actually were able to save some of their sustenance allowance over the years. And so they started off with having some money to be able to be in a position either to rent or buy. Our daughter, so she's younger, and she's in a high cost area, so it's a lot more economical for her to rent versus to own at this point. But then we've talked with her about saving as much as you can, so whenever you leave to another area, then you have a lot more flexibility with what you can do. And so thinking about your basic allowance for housing and staying below that as much as you can. And also considering what kind of ancillary expenses are associated with ownership or renting, and how that's going to eat into your BAH or your after, if you overspend, then how much that could potentially affect your take-home pay. I think too, she's about to have a big step up in her BAH, just from a promotion standpoint as well as years of service. So it's a huge step up. And so it's easy to think about how much more money you could spend and what nicer place you could get. And so just talking with her about, wow, you really like the amount you're spending now, and it's all your needs, wouldn't it be great to save some of that excess? And so, and it's been fun to watch her as she reaches milestones of savings. And with Roger, we have our high yield savings account. And so she's telling her friends, well, I earned this much off of my, this is money that was working for me. That saved, that wasn't a sacrifice to me. The money just made itself more money. And then some of her friends, and so she's been one of our biggest salespeople with her friends by talking about the Roger savings account and how fruitful that can be. But so 5 years from now, and when you're thinking about Roger and Citizens Bank of Edmond, what would be the dream for Roger and our VA lending to be at, and how we're serving service members and veterans?
I would love to, 5 years from now, to have done a VA home loan in all 50 states. I think that would be just a really cool accomplishment to show that, you know, we have expertise in all areas of the country, but that we've gotten to experience the service member life just on this side of things in all areas of the country and build relationships all across the country. I think that would be really fun to say we've done one in every single state.
That's super fun. Yeah, we'll have to go visit all those states to see those homeowners and
like how far north in Alaska could we do a VA home?
Yeah, that's great. I love that. Yeah. I mean, Alaska is awesome too. So I think that's a great goal. You know, the impact that we're able to potentially make in people's lives, both just from a banking. I mean, that's the most fulfilling part of being a banker is being part of people's stories and being able to help them achieve that generational wealth that may have seemed to eluded some as even been a dream. And certainly for me, growing up, and so to know that there's possibilities and be able to show people the possibilities and be an avenue for them to achieve that, I think it was just super fulfilling. So I can't wait to see what the future holds, and really thanks for sharing your story, and really looking forward to these next few years and seeing the volume of applications coming in and how we can really set a new standard on how VA loan specifically can be done for our service member community.
Yeah, let's do it.